Hello everyone, my name is Josh Levine and I am a Federal Solutions Architect for Automation with Palo Alto Networks. Today I'm going to be covering a scenario that is common across the IT and cybersecurity spaces, and that is comply to connect. I'm going to be performing automated remediation actions using the Cortex XSOAR platform, and I'm going to be giving you a walkthrough of the various components that comprise this demo. Let's start off with a brief overview of what this demo is going to entail. For this demonstration, I am going to be using a simulated client to connect to a Palo Alto Networks firewall using the Global Protect service. That Global Protect service is a VPN that will allow you to provide a secure connection for your remote access employees. The Global Protect service will be relying on host information profile objects to perform comply to connect checks against the endpoint, i.e., is a critical service running? Is there a certain patch level installed? Are virus definitions up to date? In this demo, I'm only going to be focused on a critical process or critical service running, but you can apply any of those different techniques using this same configuration. What I'm also going to do is validate the security posture upon the initial connection of the client, as well as after they've already been validated and authenticated into the network, to ensure that periodic checks are being done to the endpoint to make sure that security posture is maintained throughout the duration of the user session. If there's a deficiency identified, I'm going to leverage Cortex XSOAR to remediate a broken instance of the critical service, or the service I've deemed critical in this demonstration. Now there's going to be a couple of different scenarios. I'll walk you through that as we go about this demo. But the gist of it is, if the service is stopped, the service is disabled, or the service has been completely uninstalled, I want XSOAR to take remediation actions automatically to ensure that the user maintains access to the resources they need while also protecting the secure resources. So the steps for this demo, you're going to see a firewall alert generated that's going to be sent to my SIM. That alert is going to be for a non-compliant endpoint, in that the critical service is either not running, is disabled, or is completely uninstalled. That alert will be ingested by XSOAR from the SIM, which will trigger the playbook to take automated remediation actions. Let me start off by giving you a quick overview of the components you're going to see in play for this demo. The first component is going to be Cortex XSOAR, which serves as the orchestration and automation platform to tie all these disparate systems together. Again, these systems might not natively talk to each other. They might talk to each other in a limited fashion, but Cortex XSOAR allows us to expand that communication by providing integrations into native functions inherent in these platforms. For this demo, I'm focused on the Graylog and the PowerShell integrations. Graylog, again, is my SIM. It's going to be providing the data source for XSOAR to identify incidents that need to be remediated on the endpoint. And finally, PowerShell, which is going to be used to start and stop services, change a service that might be disabled back to automatic start, and execute remote commands on that endpoint. For a full list of the integrations that are available for Cortex XSOAR, you can check out the marketplace within the product, or you can go to xsoar.pan.dev. The next component is the traffic filtering firewall, which is our Palo Alto Networks VM series firewall. This also hosts the Global Protect service. The Global Protect service is the VPN service on the firewall that will also be performing the host information profile checks to make sure that my endpoint is compliant before it is granted access to the internet and to other resources on the network. The Graylog SIM was chosen simply because it's free and open source. That is the central repository for all logging data generated by the firewall, by Global Protect, and so on. Now, it's important to note that all of these components are interchangeable. I chose them for ease of access. You don't have to use Graylog. You don't have to use PowerShell. And likewise, with the critical service, you're not restricted to Syncovery, which I'll discuss here in just a second. It can be any service that's running on the Windows endpoint. This is purely for demonstration purposes. And the final component of this demo is, of course, the Windows 11 client running the Syncovery application. Syncovery was chosen for the demo just because it has a silent mode installer, which allows me to execute it without any sort of interaction from the user, thus providing completely automated remediation to get that user back up and running. And again, that can be any service that's installed on the Windows endpoint. You are not restricted to this one service. And with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and kick it over to the demo. So for this demo, there's going to be a couple components I wanted to show you before we actually see it in action. The first of which is the XSOAR playbook. Now this is going to be the bread and butter of what performs all of the actions that you're going to see demonstrated here. I'm going to go into a lot more detail on this later, but you can see a list of all the different steps that are being taken in this playbook, as well as the different branches that are created based on what XSOAR determines to be the current status of that endpoint. Now this is completely configurable. You're not locked in. You can change this at will, so if your requirements change, you can add to or remove from this playbook. But this is just a quick overview of what you're going to see. The next component obviously is the SIM. Now there's nothing there right now because I have it filtered for 2 minutes, but once we see a host information profile match from the firewall, you will see that message here, and that message is what's going to trigger the playbook within XSOAR. Finally, on the firewall, we've got a couple of different objects that I want to show you. The first, of course, is the HIP object, and this is a host information profile that is designed to check various components of the endpoint that's connecting in via Global Protect. You can see this list here on the left, so there's a lot of stuff that Global Protect can check against. Right now, the only thing I'm concerned with is a custom check for a process. In this case, I want to make sure syncovery vss.exe is running. I have it set to check to see if it's not running because that's how it's going to be applied in the security rule, which I'll show you here in just a second. The next portion is the HIP profile. The HIP profile takes a number of host information profile objects and allows you to assign them to a single profile so that way you can apply multiple object checks against a single security rule. You're not restricted to just one per rule. Finally, the security profile. This is what's going to allow or deny traffic based on the security posture of the endpoint. Again, I'm checking for all traffic coming from my VPN zone for the VPN user, which is just a user I created on the local database of the firewall. And it's going to be checking against the process checks HIP profile that I created and showed you earlier. They're going to be going out to the WAN. I don't care about what application they're using. I want to deny all traffic, which you can see right here. The action is set to deny. So with that said, let's go ahead and kick off an actual demo of this playbook. So what you're looking at here is my Windows 11 endpoint. A couple things I want you to take note of. You can see that the syncovery application right now is installed. You can see that the critical process that I showed you earlier from the firewall is running, syncovery vss.exe. And I've also got a continuous ping going out to 8888. Again, this can be any resource you want it to be. I'm just using that for simplicity's sake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uninstall this application completely, and then I'm going to attempt to connect in via the VPN. And make sure I'm actually disconnected first. I'm going to go ahead and uninstall this. So now that this is uninstalled, I am in a non-compliant posture. You'll see that here in just a second. You can see the syncovery vss.exe is no longer running. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and just connect into my Global Protect instance on the firewall. Now a couple of things are happening here. You're going to see a pop-up window. This is just letting you know that you're connected to the Global Protect portal. A lot of this stuff is put in place just for demo's sake, just so I can show you verification that certain things are occurring. So now that I'm connected, you get this little warning window. The syncovery service is not operational on your workstation. Please stand by while we've resolved this issue. As part of Global Protect, I have to close this window for it to take action. Again, that's just a manual step that I've added in purposely, but you don't need it. And as you can also see, traffic is being denied. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. So not only are you seeing the traffic blocked here, if I go over to my traffic filter or traffic monitoring, you can see if I filter based on my client IP address from the VPN, you can see where traffic was being allowed and that is now being denied. Likewise, if I go over to my SIM, the data has had a chance to populate. You can see the HIP match log that was forwarded, and this is going to be the trigger event for my playbook within Cortex XSOAR. So if I go back over to my incidents tab over here, I've already got an incident generated. This was automatically ingested every minute by XSOAR from Graylog. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is click into it. And you can see a bunch of basic information about the incident. But specifically, I want to focus on the work plan because that's where the crux of everything is. And this is really the most interesting part of the entire demo. And I am going to put these two windows side by side just so you can watch the actions take place here simultaneously. Now what I want you to focus on is on the desktop here, you're going to see the Syncovery icon reappear. You're going to see a Syncovery.exe process, not VSS. The Syncovery.exe is the installer that I have cached locally on this client. And again, that can be put anywhere you want. I just put it on the client for simplicity. And on the playbook, I have a continue step. This was just another manual process I put in place, which you'll see later why, because otherwise some of these steps execute relatively quickly and you don't get a chance to follow along. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this as completed. And you can see XSOAR has already started taking action. It's determined that the service is not installed and it's rerunning the installer. You can see that right here, Syncovery.exe and .tmp. And in just a second, this application will appear on the desktop. That's done. The application is installed. XSOAR has now checked the service, make sure it's running, and it's restarted our Global Protect agent down here in the system tray. And that's really just to reinitiate the connection to the network and allow the user to go about their daily activities. So I'm reconnected in. And there we go. I am connected into Global Protect. Now, one thing to note, you see a couple of successful pings there. That was because this client is directly connected to the internet. Again, in a realistic environment, you would not see those pings until Global Protect was reestablished. That's what you're seeing, that single drop ping. That's when Global Protect took over processing network traffic. And so that concludes the first of these demos. And as you can see, that was the most complicated of them because the XSOAR playbook had to reinstall an application. And if you take a look at the playbook logic here, if I go into edit mode, you can see the different commands that I took to execute those specific actions. In this case, again, I use PowerShell. You don't have to use PowerShell if you have other applications in place that take these actions on your endpoints. You're welcome to use those. Again, check our marketplace and the xsoar.pan.dev repo. You can see the different integrations that we support. But now let's go into a little bit simpler demo, and you'll see why I put some of these manual steps in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kill this because this is just a duplicate event. Now I have no events. I'm going to go over back to my client. I'm going to refresh the services tab. You can see that the Syncovery service is running. I'm going to go ahead and disable it. I'm not going to just stop it. I'm going to set it to completely disabled. So it's stopped, it's disabled. In a second here, you should be seeing an alert from Global Protect telling you that I am no longer compliant because I am connected to the VPN still. Now, it's important to note that Global Protect by default reports in every hour. For demonstration purposes, I have it set to report in every minute, so that way I can get those HIP checks in a more rapid fashion. But again, that all depends on what your organization's security posture and security policies mandate. The additional traffic is something you should definitely consider, but this is just for my demo instance. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here until we get the demo or the alert to pop up. So now we're back, and you can see that the alert has popped up from Global Protect, alerting the user that that service is now disabled and that they are not compliant with the security posture. Likewise, on the left side, you can see the firewall is dropping these pings, which is also verified by the command prompt window here. You can see the request timing out. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and let's go ahead and verify the service is still disabled. So I'm going to refresh that. You can see Syncovery VSS service is disabled. You can see the alerts that have come into the SIM. And likewise, if I go over here to my XSOAR instance, you can see the incident that was automatically generated. Now, if I didn't have this continue step in play at the work plan, it would have automatically resolved this. But this is the reason I wanted you to see just how fast these actions can be for remediation. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue and maximize this window, and I just want you to watch. Mark completed. So yeah, in under 5 seconds you see that it determined that the service was not running. It determined that the service was disabled, so it set it to automatic start. It started the service, it restarted the Global Protect agent, and it documented everything in our war room. So every action that's taken in these playbooks you can see in the war room. I'm going to go back over to my client. You can see that it's still showing disabled, but I'm going to go and refresh that. It is now running and set to automatic start. You can verify in the tray that I am connected to Global Protect again, and you can see the traffic going through. And that concludes this demonstration. I hope to have a few more of these coming in the future, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. I am always happy to discuss this. I hope everybody has a good day.